Miss Marple has seen enough, and now she is going to arrange a very dangerous little tea party. Welcome to Unsolved Mystery Vault. I'm your moderator, Falcon. In Episode 4, Dr. Blunt's alibi collapsed, and a devastating confession left the entire investigation turned upside down. Let me know where you are watching from. Your comments mean everything. Episode 5. Miss Marple Sets Her Trap.
Miss Marple asked Inspector Marsh for one afternoon and absolute discretion. She requested that the following persons be invited by the fiction of a reading of certain personal papers Mrs. Hartwell had wished shared with those close to her, to gather at Mulberry Cottage at 3 o'clock on Wednesday. Neville Croft, Dr. Aubrey Blunt, Cecily Vane, and Mrs. Sylvia Price. The Reverend Price, she said, need not attend. Marsh agreed with the expression of a man who suspects he is being managed and finds he does not entirely object. Miss Marple set her small sitting room with great care. A fire, despite the mild weather, because a warm room with a fire made people comfortable, and comfortable people were incautious. A plate of biscuits. 5 chairs arranged in a rough circle so that everyone could see everyone else. And tea, ordinary brown English tea in china cups, which she suspected would produce a small frisson in at least one person in the room. They assembled with the wary courtesy of people who believe themselves to be attending one kind of gathering and are not entirely sure they are right. Neville Croft sat near the window and attempted to project ease with moderate success. Dr. Blunt sat upright and said nothing. Cecily Vane sat with her hands folded and her eyes careful. Mrs. Price perched near the biscuits and watched everyone else.
Miss Marple spoke pleasantly about Dorothea Hartwell, her intelligence, her love of her garden, her formidable memory. She spoke about the village, about the fête last summer, about a recipe for Victoria's sponge that Mrs. Hartwell had been kind enough to share. She was, to all appearances, a gentle old woman reminiscing. And then, quite smoothly, she said, "Of course, Dorothea had a remarkable understanding of plants. She knew, for instance, that foxglove looks very like several common garden plants, quite beautiful, quite deadly, and quite traceable to anyone with the relevant knowledge." She watched the room. Neville Croft looked at his shoes. Dr. Blunt's jaw tightened. But Cecily Vane did something different. She picked up her teacup, set it down again without drinking from it, and then said, with barely any expression at all, "Digitalis. Yes, it was the obvious choice, given what she'd done to Eleanor." The room went very still. Mrs. Price made a small, involuntary sound. Cecily appeared to realize what she had said approximately 2 seconds after she had said it. She went very pale. Her hands, which had been so controlled, pressed flat against her knees. "Given what she had done to Eleanor," Miss Marple repeated gently, "yes, that is exactly the phrase that matters. Because Inspector Marsh had told no one outside his investigation that digitalis had been the means of death. The cause of death had been released publicly only as poisoning. The specific substance, digitalis, had been withheld, standard procedure, precisely so that only the killer would know it. Cecily Vane knew it. Moreover, she had connected it without any prompting to Eleanor. Not to Dr. Blunt, not to Neville, to Eleanor and to what Dorothea had done. The rest came quietly, because Cecily Vane was not, at heart, a person who lied easily. She was a person who had waited and planned and acted once with terrible precision and had not built the architecture of falsehood needed to sustain a long deception. She had known about Eleanor's death from the beginning, not the inquest version, the truth, which she had pieced together from Eleanor's diary found in a box of her sister's belongings months after the death. She had come to work at Hartwell Manor not to move on, but to watch. She had read Dorothea's correspondence. She was her secretary, she had access to everything, and she had understood over 3 years the blackmail of Dr. Blunt, the guilt Dorothea carried, and the knowledge that justice would never arrive on its own. She had written the blackmail note, not to extort money, but to frighten Dorothea, to see her unravel. She had given it to Neville, who owed her a favor she had carefully never called in until now, telling him only to deliver it to his aunt during the party and to say nothing. He had done so, not knowing what it was. He had been horrified afterward and too afraid to speak. And then, when Dorothea had told Dr. Blunt she had left a document somewhere safe, Cecily had understood that her own exposure was now possible. She had made her decision. The chamomile tea was Mrs. Fenn's task, but Miss Vane had come back to the manor on Friday evening. She had told Mrs. Fenn she'd forgotten the document, and she had been alone in the kitchen for 6 minutes. 6 minutes. Quite enough. Miss Marple set down her teacup and looked at Cecily with an expression that was not without compassion. "I shall ask Inspector Marsh to come in now," she said. Miss Marple knew, but could the evidence be found, and where had Dorothea hidden her dangerous document?